Now, there's two parts to the transportation of stuff. The vehicles tend to go on merchant marine ships there, run by Navy, by contractors, Navy civilians, people employees. And then those beautiful containers that make things so efficient, we can put those on commercial ships. Because we just don't, the Department of Defense, don't have enough military ships to move all our stuff. So we contract out some of the movement. So if you're at Fort Hood, you finally get the stuff to the port. Hopefully none of your trains derailed, you didn't lose something going, because it happens. Sometimes we send a train car to like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we're like, hey, we're missing 2 tanks. And then you wouldn't think you could lose 2 tanks, but you can do it. The good news is they generally don't need the train tracks. But you get all that stuff back at the port, you get the vehicles on there, you have at the other end of the port, you'll have people put the containers on here, and we won't fill up one of these ships with just one movement. So they'll be, you know, Nerf balls and rice and whatever else needs to be shipped on one of these ships. And if you're lucky, everything leaves the port, and you're like, okay, we got the plan, we're about halfway through, let's go. Now sometimes when you do this though, it doesn't always work out like you plan. And there's nothing you can do. You know, there's a power more powerful than us that gets a vote in this process, and you hope something like this doesn't happen. There's also been examples of those ships where the vehicles went on there, where they hit heavy seas and the tie downs broke, and you'll see a bulge in the ship, or maybe some of the military equipment slid into the side of the ship and actually dented the ship from the inside. And if you look real close, if you count the number of containers, you can see that there is some missing containers here. And much like the luggage carousel at the airport, it's always the container that you need. We call it the golden container. The one that gets damaged or lost is the one that has like the keys to the kingdom. Whatever that critical piece of stuff you need is, that's invariably the one that ends up getting either crushed or falling over the side. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, next. So you get this going. It takes about, for example, to go, it'll take you about a week to put, in Iraq or Afghanistan, they talk about how many combat brigades are deployed. So since that's kind of the metric of the media, we'll use that term. It'll take you about a week to get a brigade's worth of stuff off of Fort Hood. After everybody's got everything ready to go, it takes about a week of just loading and hard work to get it off of there. You'll spend about a week in the port getting it off the railhead and getting it configured. 2 days it's on the ship and it goes, and it's going to take about 30 to 40 days, depending on weather or breakdowns, to get it across the ocean to get it to the Persian Gulf. No sense having all the people leave their families for 30 days to wait on a ship, so you try and wait until just about the time the ship's going to dock before you tell all the people they got to go. And so here's obviously that's a better looking man than myself, but it looks just about like this, and you'll notice that the aircraft is not military. Much like the shipping, there's not enough aircraft in the Department of Defense to deploy your military. And so we have to rely on commercial ventures to get us from point A to point B, and we save the military aircraft for parts that are less safe. And so, and that's they call it the Civilian Reserve Aircraft Fleet. What it is you sign up for a tax break, and in exchange, when Uncle Sam says he needs you, you say, okay, I'll offer up this many aircraft. So we tend to fly out on special contracted, dedicated flights, but from commercial carriers. And then, just like you guys, you think you have issues with carry-ons, you know, like you've all been in the airport where somebody's got really what's 2 suitcases trying to masquerade as one carry-on, and they can't get it in the aisle and it won't fit in the overhead bin. You tell soldiers they're leaving somewhere for a year, you want to see large carry-ons. And then you have those stories, you know, like invariably, the container that falls over the side is the one with your clean underwear in it. You know, and so you see these horror stories and everybody's like, oh, I'm not putting nothing on that ship, I'm going to take it all on board as a carry-on. And you pretty quickly build a plane that can't lift off the ground because of the weight. And there's a lot of ocean between us and there. Fuel economy counts when you do the math for this. So part of this challenge is getting everybody down to weight. Literally, you have them stand there with their bags and their soldiers, and you're going to make this weight or you're not going on. And it's kind of a gamble. The good news about it being a contract flight is if you're flying 200 people and everybody weighs in and you say, hey, the plane's over. Well, it's pretty easy. Everybody's going to the same destination. You're like, okay, start taking off bags. And so you can actually backfire on you. The guy that thinks he's going to carry all his socks and underwear with him for a year onto the plane, it may be his bags that they get taken off for a later flight because it doesn't make weight. But then you go off and you do great things. Next. So then you get to the other end. And much like you saw that ship where kind of the containers go over the side, the same kind of drama happens when you're flying people. It's not like we book the new aircraft that only has first class. You know, if you were running an airline and you had to sit there and give up a flight to the government because of a tax deal you made, you generally don't give up the one with all the first class seats. So it's not uncommon in the course of the flight that you may spend a day or two in Leipzig, Germany. Most of you are like, Leipzig, Germany, where's that? I know where it's at because when the inter-German border was up, when it used to be East Germany, that was a large concern for the Soviet Army. It's not a vacation destination, so when you spend time there, you're just kind of hanging out in the terminal with no vending machines for a couple days while they fly in parts. And so when you get to the other end, everybody's got this kind of dazed and confused look because it may be 1 or 2 days that you live on an airplane till you get there. But you kind of marshal them up and like, hey, welcome to Kuwait. This is a great, stunning experience, one of the best vacations you're ever going to have. And you kind of take charge of them, get them organized, and move them on. So now you have people arriving, and you got to take care of them until you get them linked up with their vehicle. Next. If all goes well, the people arrival and the ship arrival is within days of each other. And it's hard to appreciate this, but this is the top deck of that ship you saw early on being loaded. And it's looking out over the port of Ashwaiba in Kuwait. And over here, they look like little tiny Lego blocks. Those are those containers we saw being loaded. And if you look at these dots way here in the background, those are the vehicles that are coming off the ship that are being lined up so they can sort out who's belong to whose. And so again, this process here maybe takes 2 days to get off. And then it'll take another week to get them organized and get the people linked up so they can drive them off, link up with their containers, and get everything sorted back out. Next. Okay. Now, if that wasn't enough friction in the process, once you get to the other country, like Transcom does a pretty good job of coordinating all the moving pieces for what has to happen in the United States. But Transcom doesn't have any authority at the other end. It's kind of like a travel agent. You know, you can buy a ticket here, but once you get to the other airports, you're at the mercy of the baggage handlers at the other airport. Same dilemma here. They put the plan together, but now it's just a good idea that goes to the other end. So, for example, when we were in Kuwait, things are going well. We're getting off. Only the boss's plane broke down, so it was kind of nice. The boss wasn't in my hair for about 4 days. The bad side was when the boss showed up 4 days after leaving on the airplane, he was in a bad mood. But things are generally in the aggregate going okay. And then the government of Kuwait says, excuse us, we have stopped all construction in our country. And I'm like, you know there's a punchline to this, right? I mean, why does he tell me they're not doing any construction? He says, because we cannot get any sand into the port. I'm a little slow on the uptake. I'm like, you can't, we're in the Kuwait. I mean, if they've got one thing, they've got heat and they've got sand. And I'm like, you have no sand. All right, there's a punchline here. Somebody had to explain to me that in Kuwait, they have to import sand to make concrete because the aggregate of the sand is insufficient to form the cohesion you need with cement to make concrete. And so what had happened is our influx of equipment at this point was stifling their economy because we were consuming the resources of their port. And we're like, okay, this is nice. Clearly, you have a right to take care of, and if they're worried about sand, then pretty quickly I'm like, well, holy cow, where's rice and groceries and all the other stuff coming into? So in the midst of this great plan, all of a sudden you may not be able to dock your ship because in this case it's a cement ship coming in that just bringing in aggregate for concrete. It just comes in and takes priority. I mean, they've got, the host nations got things that they've got to get done at the same time. So at the other end, there's a little bit of juggling, a little bit of friction while you do this. But in the aggregate, this is all the easy part of the plan. This is almost, you can almost believe the brochure at this point. Oh, it's a ballet. This is special. We've gone through the first 4 acts and we're largely on schedule. Next.